Please note that there are references to self-harm in this episode.
Welcome to another episode of Shift. I'm Peter Hislop, and joining me is the producer of Shift, Stuart, who is, I guess, in a way, being the interviewer in this process. We did hunt around to get a professional interviewer, but they were all just way too expensive. So we've sort of come back down to Stuart. So perhaps this is a new career for you, Stuart.
Well, it is, I suppose, but also it wouldn't really work if you were asking me about executive coaching, because I think these would be quite short episodes.
Viewers would probably enjoy that. What are we talking about today?
Well, I want to ask a few more questions about executive coaching, because I'll admit I probably never come across it as a concept before speaking to you. I'm so far removed from that world that it's not funny. But I think one of the first things I thought when you were talking to me about what you do is that, God, you must come across a lot of big egos when you're dealing with people. And I'm sure it's not everybody, but that would take a lot of skill to navigate sometimes when you're telling some people things they might not want to hear, but obviously you still want to keep them as a client. How do you tread that line?
Firstly, you've got to realise that, or accept to yourself that you may not be able to keep the person as a client. Right. If they're completely unable to handle the truth, it comes from some movie somewhere, then they may walk away, and that's fine. Now, it's really only happened to me once or twice, but of those, on one occasion, the person came back some weeks later. But it's not so much ego as so much as it's a need to be right, exercised constantly. Mm. I don't necessarily think these people have generally large egos. If you're at the senior end of the top 20 ASX or top 20 private companies, there are people there who exist on ego. And at the bottom end of the ASX, there are people who exist on ego. But it's more a need to be right, which is built up over the years of infuriatingly being right. So, a lot of people are criticised because they've got this habit of being right. This has come from an ability to be right. But it becomes, I'm right so often that everyone must be wrong.
Right.
And so I'm only ever going to be right. And that's the need to break down. That's the need for them to step back and say to their direct reports, okay, I don't know the answer to this question. What do you think? And then listening.
So that sounds like a subconscious level thing. Someone at that level believing they're right, it doesn't sound necessarily like a choice that they're making. I believe I'm right. It's just perhaps a subconscious thing. How do you go about breaking that down?
Look, you can. There are a couple of ways of doing it. One of the ways of doing it is to say, okay, you believe you're right. Give me 5 reasons why you could be wrong.
A question they rarely ask themselves, I'm sure.
Yes, and force them to do that. Right? Or you can say to them, okay, let's challenge the assumptions that you've used, albeit, very, very quickly, to come to that decision. And what if one of those assumptions is partly wrong, has passed its use-by date, has got too much rust on it?
That sounds like a gentle way to approach it.
Yeah, and so you start digging away at it. So you don't get into a confrontation with a client. You just start showing them, well, hold on, there may be some gaps in my thinking. Most of these people don't think necessarily. They're just relying on what's been before. And that's the problem, because in the commercial world, we have this fight on how we do things. We've always done it this way. And now I think victory in a marketplace is doing it differently. So if you look at Steve Jobs, up until Steve Jobs, I mean, I had a good friend who was a musician, and every so often she would bring out a new cassette, and people would say, oh, I can see how she's changing. Right? Steve Jobs came along and said, well, you're not going to have those anymore. I'm just going to sell your individual songs. And so
Mm.
you can't. And he was right in that he changed everything to be right. In my view, he was wrong and should never have changed it because we've lost that ability to track. So there are variances that you've got to be careful of. And we now have a complexity in the world that means the idea of the one-off right can't be justified. We have to go back. We have to look at the history, and we're losing the history. We're not dealing with the history any longer. I mean, when I was just out of school and I was running around as an article clerk, you'd go into reception areas of big firms of solicitors, and you'd see the history of the firm in a big coffee table book sitting there, and you
Mm.
could go through it and they would have all the photographs. We don't have that anymore. We don't have the history. We don't look at what's happened in the past to figure out what's happening today. We have no more in the olden days, I suppose, you could go down to the person on the factory floor who'd been employed somewhere for 20 years, who understood more about how the place worked than the guy who'd owned it or who'd just bought it. And so right was up there. He could say, okay, this is what we want to do.
Mm.
But if they'd gone back down and looked at the history, that right may have been slightly varied. The complexity of what's going on is understandable if you go back and look at the history.
Mm.
So historians, if the historians want to deal with a particular issue, they will go back and look at the history and what happened and how it was built up. Why aren't we doing that in the commercial world?
And is that a factor of your coaching? Like,
Sometimes it is.
yeah.
If you're coaching a CEO, particularly a new CEO, you'd say, well, go find the heroes in the company and talk to them
Mm.
about how the company's developed.
They could be anywhere at any level, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
That's right. So we have this need for instant gratification, instant solutions. So we rush to technical solutions. How do we get to a technical solution? We think exactly the same way as we thought 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago. Here's our solution. Let's give it to the market and off we go. Well, no wonder this basically fails. Innovation comes from people who've looked at something for a while and then said, now we can change it. Now, the ones that worry me is some of the new financial startups that have a new product that no one has ever tested and has no links to the past.
Right.
That worries me. I think there has to be a history because the world has been built on one simple energy, the one energy that we are playing with at our risk at the moment, and that's evolution. AI gets in the way of evolution. Evolution says people need to learn to think in a particular way and continue to learn to think and increase their ability to think. AI says, oh, no, don't worry about it. I'll do that for you.
Got you covered. We'll do that for you.
Yeah, so you just sit over there in the corner, watch television, do whatever you like. Evolution suddenly says, well, nothing for me to do. There's no playground. There's no garden for me to grow.
Mm.
And we do this at our own risk because if we stop evolution, everything stops. Evolution has been the one thing that historians will talk about is this is how we came to where we are today.
I think there's probably a lot to be discussed in that area.
Sure.
What AI is going to mean for not only the corporate world, but the thinking world.
Yes, before we lose control.
Mm. So you expect a fair amount of pushback when you start with certain clients, I'm sure, in terms of maybe not wanting to hear some of the things you've got to say. Is there a certain point you've gotten to before with clients where you've gone, okay, I expect this amount of feedback, pushback, but now it's just too much, like where you think you're just not going to be able to get through?
It's not an experience that I've had on a regular basis.
Right.
But I can imagine that, there are all sorts of levels of coaching. Coaching does not have any barriers to entry. You can just say, I'm a coach, and people will say, okay.
Mm.
And if you've got a history that you can point to, then they'll say, okay, we'll give you a chance. There is often a mix-up between coaching and mentoring. Mentoring says, well, I've been here before, this is what I did when I was in that position. Coaching says, well, I don't have to have been there, I just want to help you
Mm.
change your thinking.
And I have a method.
Yeah, so I think that, uh, and there are particular ways to create yourself as a more effective coach that are not necessarily needed if you're happy to coach at a particular level of results
Mm.
and happy to say at the end, well, this person coaching wasn't right for them, or so I'm not wishing to be critical of other coaches, but I think there are definite levels of quality in coaching.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about change, because that was the focus of the most recent episode. You were pretty damning about some companies' attitudes to change. So, and specifically, I suppose, a lot of empty language that can be used around the concept. This is a big bugbear of yours, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do you feel so passionate about that particularly?
Well, change was a fairly simple word when we used to use it when I was younger. It meant being in one position and then taking another position, or living somewhere and living somewhere else, traveling one way, traveling somewhere else. We've now used change as a kind of band-aid or an aspiration for a company in trouble. Okay, let's run a change program. And everyone goes, oh, that's a good idea. What are we going to change? Well, that's a little bit more difficult. Well, let's get one of the big consultants in, and they will come in with a pre-packaged plan of change. Now, that assumes a number of things. Firstly, that the change program that's suggested is right for the company. It suggests that people are sitting in the organisation panting with the idea of change. Isn't this fantastic? I can't wait for this to happen.
Usually a lot of fear attached to it.
Yes, because how many people are going to get sacked at the end? And there'll be also the group of people who are going to say, oh, yeah, we've had, one change program every year. Move on. And don't want to talk about it and just ignore it. And some of them are very good at ignoring very, very expensive change programs. I mean, they're very good at it. I've been involved in a couple of change programs whose costs would just make your eyes water. And senior executives and middle managers are really good at just saying, oh, did I just notice something? Yes, it was the change program that just went past you. Oh, okay, fine. Nothing really, really happens. Or if it does, it doesn't last for a long time. I think to change an organisation, we need a different word: transform, alter, um, make a little bit more sophisticated, fine tune it. You need to be specific. Okay, so we want to fine tune our budgeting. We want to fine tune our employment. We want to fine tune the way we measure effectiveness, rather than a change program that either bores the hell out of everyone or scares the hell out of everyone.
Right. And it's lazy language, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Why not just describe? We're going to have a program where we are going to have twin focuses on how we employ people and twin focuses on how we are going to manage the cost problem. So particularly in big organizations, and I have spent a lot of time in banks, so I'm not kicking banks, but banks do this really badly. In the abundant times, bank goes mad employing. Let's employ more people in this particular. Then as soon as there is a pressure on the costing, it's not costing at the top where people start taking reductions of salary. It's, okay, now we've got to start sacking people. The first opportunity of cost saving in most of these big listed companies is sacking people. And you can't play with the world of employment by employing, sacking. It's an absurdity, and it's a technical solution, right, to a complex problem.
Not great for optics either.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So from what you're saying, does that mean you feel that a lot of companies have these change programs just as something they feel they have to do, rather than a genuine want or need?
I think they have them because they're trying to placate stakeholders, whether
Right.
they be shareholders, institutional investors, whoever. It's all right, we're running a change program. Oh, great. Okay, fair.
So that's a way of, I guess, keeping any questions at bay
Yeah,
for a while from stakeholders, shareholders, etc.
exactly right. Whereas I would say, okay, you want to have a look at the organisation and see what's going right and wrong. Let's take a group of people from right across the organisation away, put them in a room and say, okay, what needs to change? How can we change it? And dig deep. Really go down to the deep end of the swimming pool and dive in. Whereas most of these change programs are a whole lot of executives sitting, playing in the shallow end. You know, and then the shallow end has really good wine, really good dinners, really nice areas, helicopter flights in and out of the resort on the side of a mountain. And then that's supposed to encourage them all to sit around and think deeply.
Mm.
Now, let's take them down the deep end.
So if you feel that somebody you're coaching has that kind of, perhaps flippant is the word, attitude to change, do you see it as your responsibility to try and do something about that? Or
Look, I don't know whether it's my responsibility or not, but I just do it.
yeah,
Because I think now I've been around long enough to be eccentric, long enough to be, I just want to see change
yeah,
done properly. I want it to be, I want to drop the word change. I want to be more specific in language. I want to see organisations stop settling for technical solutions and dive deep into the more complex solutions that will last longer. I remember years ago seeing a documentary, I think it was in South Africa, where they were co-joined twins. And the documentary was about the group of surgeons, there were 26 of them put together. They were going to do the operation that would last 2 days to separate the twins. They were joined at the head. And they went through 3 days with a leader, 3 days of figuring out step by step by step by step by step how they would do this, covering what could happen. This is a danger area. What are the 5 things that could happen? What are we going to do? Right.
Mm.
And I thought this is the way we should be operating, because we're humans, we're in charge of the planet. That's the way we should be operating. But suddenly we're settling for AI. And I was thinking the other day, taking that same scenario, we're going to say, okay, let's all give it to the AI machine and let them figure out how to do it. And then even worse, let's connect the AI machine to a robot and let the robot do it.
Yeah.
And we'll all just sit around in the lunchroom waiting for the operation to finish.
Yeah.
No, because the reason is we have to evolve. We're allowing ourselves to have that interruption to our evolution. And in organisations, we should bring back our thinking, bring back our ownership of the ideas and the thoughts, if not of the organisation.
Yeah.
Let's make organisations the result of our thinking. That's what we're not doing anymore.
Mm.
Let's have employees leave the factory, turn around and say, look what we've done.
Yeah.
Not, where's the local pub? We're losing that. We're losing that evolutionary quality about us. I mean, I remember my daughter, when she was at school, she would have, some of her friends would say in the car, look, that my dad built that. Right? My dad's company built that building. What does your dad do? And Georgina used to say, oh, he just goes around talking to people and I don't think anyone listens. So that was hard for her when it's surrounded by people who could say, this is what they've done.
Mm.
This is what they're... So we're losing that. And we're losing the connection to the solution.
And it's important to keep because, going back to the change programs, that sort of thing done recklessly can really affect lives detrimentally, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of ethically on an exec team to make sure that it's not done in a kind of gratuitous or perfunctory way.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also a part of the exec team is to make everyone involved in the organisation involved in its success.
Rather than just people being worried that when's the axe coming?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about something you described in that change episode, and that's you being homeless. And you talked about a nurse saying something to you that changed everything for you.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's a big story, right? So, first of all, how long did you spend homeless?
It depends on the definition of homeless, but for the sake of this story, let's say the 3 years living on the streets in Sydney, no bed, no roof, very few clothes. If it rained, I'd have to wear the same clothes until they dried off, type thing. Hadn't used a knife and fork, hadn't slept in a bed, that sort of thing. Beard down to my waist and hair so I was pretty sick.
Mm.
So I end up in a drunk tank, and through an odd series of events, I end up in a clinic. And after they had detoxed me, and I was able to walk, because that was a big thing, because of the shaking head to foot and that sort of thing. I was sitting on this balcony area, and she came out and sat next to me, and she'd been with me all the way through this, and she said, "Peter, what are you thinking?" And I said, "I'm thinking what a piece of garbage I am.
Mm.
I have thrown away everything that was done for me as a child. I've thrown away friends. I've thrown away family. I have no ability to get in touch with anyone. Look what I've come to. I just want to kill myself. So I need to go and kill myself." And she said, "Well, you can't do it here." And I said, "Well, no, just give me my clothes back, and
That's a
I'll
nurse practicality.
give me my clothes back, and I'll won't be any problem for anyone. I
Mm.
just wanted to get away." And she said, "Well, we actually had to burn your clothes, and you're in our pajamas. So if you want to leave here, we want the pajamas back." And I said, "Well, that means that I don't have any clothes." And she said, "Do you think that's my problem?" And I sort of sat there, and we talked and talked. And she said, "So you think you're the scum of the earth, et cetera, et cetera." She said, "What about if none of that's true? The only thing that's true is you drink too much, that you're an alcoholic." And the first thing that happened was this huge weight lifted. It was like a cage around my head moved away. And I suddenly thought, yes, that's right. I'm just an alcoholic. That all the other stuff's not true. And that was a wow moment that I will never, ever forget. That was a come to truth moment. That was, and all she did was, she would have made a great coach, ask the right question.
Ask the right question at the right time. And so at that point, this might sound like I'm phrasing it quite bizarrely, but had you forgotten that alcohol was a contributor to all this? Like, because it sounds like
Oh no, because
just pointing to something.
No, I was waiting to get out. So before I killed myself, I knew I needed a drink.
Right.
Even though I'd been 3 or 4 days without a drink, I didn't believe that I could go much longer. I was still shaking. I couldn't eat food. Someone would have to feed me. I was a mess.
Mm.
I still had a long way of detoxing to go. So, yeah, but in that isolated arena of the clinic, I seemed to survive a little bit easier than other people. But I did want to leave, and I did need a drink.
So what did that epiphany moment do for you practically? What happened next?
I started thinking, well, maybe I can deal with this. Tell me what I can do next.
Mm.
What can I rebuild? What do I need? And she very quickly said, well, you can stay here for 3 weeks, do some programs in here, and see where we go. But you're not going to leave. We're going to keep you in pajamas. you're not going to be in a position where you can't go out with anyone. We don't trust you. So you're going to have to stay. They used to allow some people who'd been there for a few days out to do shopping, and we don't trust you. You will stay here.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, and they sent people along who I thought just happened to be in the room, but obviously they'd sent along to talk to me about recovery and what you needed to do, and if I wanted to go to the halfway house, which ultimately I did, these are what you had to do. You had a year to find a job, all of those sorts of things. So I started thinking, well, okay, maybe, just maybe, I can get a job as a clerk somewhere. I get a little flat in Dulwich Hill. I don't know why Dulwich Hill was the goal. And I'll just live there quietly. And then I'll make sure that I have some stuff in the house that allows me to kill myself when I'm ready. So I sort of planned it all out. I had no idea that I'd stopped drinking. So I was, if I can get a little job and I can not drink during the day and drink at night. It was all absurd logic.
I guess little packaging of it to make it seem more okay.
Oh, look, alcoholics, one of the great characteristics or qualities of alcoholics, particularly drinking alcoholics, is the ability to lie. We are great manipulators and liars. We will create what sounds like a reasonable story to anyone. We're very good at it. Very, very good at it. So, we do it to ourselves as well.
And we've got 3 episodes on truth coming up very shortly.
Yes. The truth is important.
So you've kind of indicated getting back to change and when big change is required and the fact that change can be intimidating. You've kind of indicated that you almost reached a point where you felt comfortable in your homelessness.
Oh, yes. So there were plenty of people who'd come along when you're lying on the gutter or sitting up against a fence, and they very nice people, and they'd say, look, why don't we take you to a shelter, give you a nice hot meal, all of that sort of thing. And all I would think is they're going to take my name, number, and I'm going to get into a system I can't get out of it. So I would say, absolutely fine, thank you. I'm all right. Don't need you. That's great.
Why was that so scary?
Don't know. But it was. I had control where I was. Even though because I'm weak, I was regularly beaten up, I had still somehow felt I had control.
Right.
So I didn't want to lose that control. I'm still a bit of a control freak.
But do you draw on that when you're trying to convince your clients about the importance of change and how to go about it? And perhaps
I do it talking to them about the possibility of change and how change can come quickly. I don't talk about it as look at me. I only use it with clients where they think, well, hold on, that's a big change. What he's asking me to do is a lot softer than that. So maybe I'll give it a go. So that's when you would use it. It's like AA meetings. People who regularly attend AA meetings hear the same story again and again and again, but it's a story that means something to them because they know that people have gone through that in the same way that they're going through it. So that's why I think one of the great programs or elements of change programs to be run with companies is everyone sit down and talk about all the change programs they've been through and why they failed and why they didn't, and get used to the stories, right? To create leadership points of view where they identify the struggles, because everyone's been through a struggle of some sort. What struggles did you have to go through to give up smoking? What struggles did you have to go through because you had a shitty childhood? You've been through that. Where did that strength? Why aren't you using that strength? So really reaching back and having a look at where you've developed strength. And now I need that strength again. It hasn't gone anywhere because it's in your memory.
It's easy to forget sometimes in the
Yes,
bustle of day to day, right?
because we wallow in the technical solution. I feel better. I got home. Wow, I can settle down. I can watch television.
Yeah.
Rather than, wow, settle down now. What did I learn today? What do I need from my past to deal with what's coming up?
Or settle down and watch podcasts, just like Shift. And if you know anybody who needs a shift, politely, of course, you can suggest this podcast to them.
Please do.
Thanks very much again for having me, Peter.
And you, Stuart.